So we're going to start from the beginning because I want you to follow the timeline here. It was almost, I think, about 10 months ago that Eric Adams was being tapped for corruption. So the first time I heard about this was last year, and I covered that story, that he was being, they were looking into him and they were saying, oh, there's nothing to come of this. Or he said there was nothing to come of it. I remember that. And what was crazy is before all of this happened, right before it happened, Eric Adams was criticizing the Biden administration. I remember this. He was very vocal and he was not happy that he was not receiving a response from the Biden administration about helping New York City handle the migrant situation. So Eric Adams, for those who are not aware, he's not complaining that there are migrants that have come to New York City. He was complaining that the Biden administration was not giving him the resources that he needed to take care of them. And it just seemed like after he started criticizing the Biden administration publicly, the feds started coming after him. All of a sudden, it was like, let's look into Eric Adams. Let's look into his campaign funds. That's how it started. And then just 2 weeks ago, the feds raided Eric Adams' home. Now, let's take you to that clip here from ABC News. Remember, Mayor of New York City, former NYPD police officer, and the feds have raided his home. We're going to take you through the timeline, folks.
Out of the FBI raid on the homes of top aides to New York Mayor Eric Adams, investigators are also seeking information on city officials, including the police commissioner. Senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky has that story. Good morning, Aaron.
And good morning to you, George. Federal investigators are now reaching into the mayor's inner circle, taking aim at some of his top deputies and closest aides. This morning, the mayor of New York insists he and his administration are clean and cooperating.
I'm not aware of any misdoings, and I'm going to, again, follow the rules.
The mayor says he can't fathom why, but sources tell ABC News federal prosecutors and the FBI have opened new investigations focused on City Hall and the NYPD, including many of the administration's senior leaders. Investigators have seized the phones of Police Commissioner Edward Caban and at least a half dozen other top NYPD officials. And in pre-dawn raids, they searched the homes of 2 deputy mayors and the school's chancellor.
So pretty much his administration, like his cabinet here, right? Like this is his team. We're talking about deputies. We're talking about the NYPD police commissioner, not just Eric Adams, but his whole crew. Are they trying to say that Eric Adams is corrupt? Are they trying to tell us that?
Charges have been filed, and the mayor says his administration has nothing to hide.
We're going to comply with whatever rules, and we're going to follow the law. And we're going to make sure that whatever information is needed, we're going to turn over that information.
For most of his 3 years in office, Adams and his campaign have faced scrutiny over whether they took illegal foreign money. The FBI seized his phones last November. Sources say the new investigations are separate. City Hall says there's no indication the mayor himself is a target of any investigation. Adams was once lauded as the new face of the Democratic Party, but these investigations could threaten his ability to lead the nation's largest city. Michael, as one political opponent put it, how can you clean up the city when your own house is a mess? Michael.
All right, Aaron Katursky.
I love the way he ended that. How can you clean up the city when you can't clean up your own mess? Oh, yeah. Moving on, too. I remember at one point they were even thinking about, oh, well, Eric Adams, should he run for president? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So just think about that. Now, fast forward. And the NYPD police commissioner has resigned. Now, this is after the federal investigation has started. All of a sudden, he's like, I am out of here. And you also have to know that prior to him, he's fairly new. There was another police commissioner. It was a female. She wasn't there long under Eric Adams, and she resigned. She didn't give a reason for resigning. I guess she wanted to, protect her career. So she didn't give any complaints about working for Eric Adams or anything like that. She just resigned, and people were saying, why did this just come out of the blue? And so there was another NYPD commissioner who was, I remember the story, they said he was the first Hispanic to be appointed to NYPD police commissioner. So I remember when they came out with that story. So dude hasn't even been there long, and now he is ready to go. Listen to this.
We are following breaking news. The commissioner of the New York City Police Department has resigned today amid a federal investigation. NBC News has obtained Edward Caban's resignation letter, which was sent to members of the police department earlier today. Caban took over the department in July 2023 after being tapped by Mayor Eric Adams, whose administration is the target of multiple investigations right now. NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter has been tracking this story really from the very beginning. Tom, this is all tied to the possibility of corruption in New York City.
That's exactly right, Kate. And for people in other parts of the country, you might be saying, well, why do we care what's going on at the top of the NYPD? But the NYPD is the largest police department in the country and in the world. And given their reach in the counterterrorism and intelligence fields, it's likely that your local police department at some point, or at least your state, has received a benefit as a result of NYPD investigations. So when the commissioner steps down, and as you just said, it's tied to the possibility, what federal investigators are looking into, whether or not the police commissioner was aware of or had knowledge or directed a scheme that may have involved his brother, his twin brother, James, in the question of whether or not James was receiving payment from nightclubs and bars in exchange for helping out with the police department and basically getting special treatment from local precincts. And that's generally where this investigation centers around. We should note nobody's been charged here. Mm-hmm. Nobody's been accused by federal prosecutors of any wrongdoing. But this started last week when Caban's phone was seized by federal investigators. This became a huge distraction. He didn't even attend the 9/11 memorial ceremonies yesterday. Yeah. And I think it came to a point today where he said, look, it's time for me to step down and try to remove this distraction.
And he's not.
And I just want to interrupt here and just say something as well. Like when it gets to the point where they're seizing your phones, they're looking for they're looking for data. I don't know if they're looking at pictures, phone numbers that you may have in their text messages that you may have on your phone. They're looking for data. So I know it's probably no surprise to everyone to say, you know, the NYPD is corrupt. No surprise. They are. But I had serious reservations about Eric Adams when he was running for mayor. I was like, I can't believe the people of New York City are thinking about electing a former cop. He was one of the ones that wanted to bring back stop and frisk, by the way. Insane, crazy. But that's who they voted for. And from what I understand, talking to people that live there, he doesn't seem to be a favorable mayor. And I don't know how people would compare him to Mayor Giuliani, because Mayor Giuliani was also corrupt. The corruption just runs deep.
Admitting any wrongdoing in his statement that he
That's
released. Correct. Right. Okay. Tom Winter, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, buddy. They're coming after everybody in New York. And I want to show you more recent information. This was posted yesterday. We're going to get into a little bit more details. The unraveling of Eric Adams' administration. Oh, man, is bad. Eric, you have had brighter days. I've seen better days. I've seen better days. We're going to get into this part here. Just last week, NYPD Commissioner Eric Caban stepped down a week after federal authorities seized his cell phone in an ongoing investigation. Days later, Lisa Zornberg, the chief counsel and legal advisor to the mayor, also submitted her resignation. That was followed by the resignation of Kristen Kaufman, the deputy commissioner of public-private partnerships and economic development, this week. In recent press conferences, Adams sought to take focus off of his administration. He said he's focusing on protecting the people of the city. Well, Eric Adams is Batman? Okay. He said the investigations will take care of themselves. And that is not where my time is going to be consumed of answering the same questions over and over again. We know what you know. What a dodger. It goes on to say, so when did Adams' problems begin? According to Gothamist and WNYC reporter Elizabeth Kim, it was sometime late last year. This goes back to November when federal agents raided several individuals, mostly notably Adams' top fundraisers. So this is going back to campaign funds. She added that it wasn't unusual for there to be investigations into a mayor's fundraising and that there was one for the previous mayor, Mayor Bill de Blasio. But what was unusual and really raised people's eyebrows was when federal agents also seized the mayor's phones. That's when the political observers started thinking that this is rather serious because that was pretty much unprecedented in New York. So what exactly is Adams being investigated for? Kim says the first thing to keep in mind is that these are ongoing probes. As a rule, federal prosecutors do not speak publicly about the investigations. We do know that part of the focus has been on illegal donations from Turkish officials. Then there's another investigation into one of Mayor Adams' fundraisers who really focuses on the Chinese community. And with that, that's really all we know. We know that her home was also searched. There is also an investigation into the NYPD. Surprise, surprise. That one has also involved the police commissioner's brother. He happens to be a consultant in the nightlife industry, and there has been some reporting that it could involve bribery involving even a member of the mayor's administration. He recently let go of someone who was in charge of nightlife operations. Then there's the investigation into the deputy mayor for public safety. Now, before I get to that, I want you to hear something pretty interesting. When we talk about the nightlife operations, you know, it is not uncommon for certain mayors in certain cities to look out for certain establishments when it comes to nightlife. And I'll give you an example. When I lived in New York, this is when Mayor Giuliani was, there. And I remember there was a guy, he was a bouncer at a club. And he was upset. It was a random conversation. He was upset and he said that he thought that because Giuliani was one of him, he said he was supposed to look out for establishments like mine. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, he was like, we put an Italian in the mayor's office. And who does he screw over? He screws over the Italian nightclubs. And I was like, oh, so you wanted him to do you a favor. It's a mess. It goes on to say, this is a person whose name is Phil Banks. His relationship with the mayor stretches back decades. He happens to be the brother of the school's chancellor. Now, there has been a focus on yet another member of the family, a brother who works as a consultant and has represented businesses who have contracts with the city. Adams' response and the next step. According to Kim, the mayor has aimed to downplay these investigations from the start. He wouldn't even call it an investigation. He would refer to them as reviews. Wait a second. Okay, guys, if the feds ever come to your house, you just tell them, oh, do you want to do a review? Oh, my God. He would remind the Republic that he, as a former police officer, was a member of law enforcement and that he's always followed the rules. Sure, he has, is what he says, and that he has always told his staff to follow the rules. But she explains that in recent weeks, beginning with the departure of the police commissioner, the mayor has been forced to address this shift and acknowledge the concerns that New Yorkers have. So the mayor, who had the Rona last week, had a virtual address both to announce the resignation of the police commissioner, but also to try to reassure New Yorkers that he was not distracted by these investigations and that he was going to let them play out and that he was confident that it would come out that he had done nothing wrong. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just, it doesn't look too good for Eric and friends. Doesn't look too good for Eric Adam and friends. And again, I have to say, I've said this before. I just find it to be kind of strange that he was targeted after he publicly criticized the Biden administration multiple times about not helping them with resources for the migrant community in New York. So I don't know. It could just be a coincidence. But you know how it is sometimes with these politicians and you're a part of their party. When you're singing their praises, they're there to help you. But the moment you criticize them, they shut the door. And sometimes they'll send the feds after you. Oh my God. Crazy stuff. We're going to continue to follow that story because I do feel like that story in particular has kind of slipped under the radar. Like when I looked for that story after Roger sent me the article, I didn't see a lot of people covering that story. So we'll just make sure we continue to follow it.